Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of the Mumbai Manifesto. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Mumbai Manifesto series, where we deep dive into the magic and madness that make up the city of dreams. Our topic for discussion is urban futures. Can Mumbai remain in the race? Our guest today is a very special person, Dr. Madhav Pai, CEO at the World Resources Institute in India. Dr. Pai is an authority on several issues concerning urban development, urban renewal, environment, housing, and so many other things that make up the challenges faced by cities across the world today. He has a footprint of work both in India and abroad, but he has a large body of work in the city which he calls home, that is Mumbai. Welcome to the Mumbai Manifesto, Dr. Madhav Pai. To begin with, let's take on an issue which has been an issue of Mumbai for the longest time. It's always been the financial capital, it's been the city of dreams. It's also been a very overpopulated city for a few decades now. Overpopulation has been a big problem with Mumbai. And it's visible with how the trains are bursting at the seams, how the BEST bus services, the buses are full, people are flowing out of the buses. Is Mumbai just so overpopulated that it's beyond repair? At some level, we hear in urban circles that density is good for cities. Mumbai is very dense. I mean, where do we draw the line saying the city is overpopulated and it has optimum density? So the question I'm trying to ask is, has Mumbai already reached a point where its carrying capacity has been reached, it has been exceeded, and it cannot afford to have any more people coming in? Have we already reached there?
See, I mean, this is not a very straightforward answer. See, I think density, we always say that, why are cities important, right? In today's world, in today's economy, right? If you look world over, most of the economic activity is concentrated in cities. Cities, I mean, in a way, world was never designed to be 9.5 billion people, right? I mean, now that we are at 9.5 billion people, or we will become 9.5 billion people, what is the most sort of optimum way of accommodating this population on earth is a question, right? So, and cities actually represent a very unique opportunity where you are able to actually meet the needs and the aspirations of people with a lower environmental footprint because of economies of scale. Now, when you ask the Mumbai question, see, Mumbai hasn't grown in population in the last 2 decades probably. Most of the growth has been in the metropolitan region, which is
Navi Mumbai, and
there are 9 cities, right? It's not Navi Mumbai, right? It's Navi Mumbai, Thane, Mira Bhayandar, Kalyan Dombivli, Panvel has also become a municipal park. So we need to talk about the agglomeration, MMR, right? Mumbai metropolitan region, the 10 cities that are there, and how do we accommodate, right? How do we leverage what is Mumbai's economy today to become sort of that economy of the future? And then what's the most efficient one, as we do that, what's the most efficient way to make sure that we do it in a sort of an inclusive manner, in a sustainable manner, in the most sort of environmentally friendly manner, right? I think that should be the question. I think this carrying capacity question, I think, is not, I think there's enough literature that says that, I mean, it's hard, you can't put artificial, I mean, it has a very different kind where you're trying to control something. I think for us, the question is, today Mumbai, say, is a 350 million or 350 million dollar economy, right? For a country like ours with with a demographic dividend and how the world economy is positioned, Mumbai has the capability to actually create more jobs, right? So So I think, and one of
sorry, I'll just come in here. The reason I'm asking you is this, that while it is overpopulated, the question is, can Mumbai remain in the race? You have a Bangalore, you have a Hyderabad, you have so many other new cities which are, not new cities, but cities which are reinventing themselves. Mumbai needs to also grow and reinvent itself. For that, it needs young people coming in. Is it going to be capable of first attracting those people and sustaining those people?
So, two questions. I'll try to answer your first question, which was okay. So, what I'm saying is Mumbai needs to grow its economy, right? Mumbai, for itself, for the state, for the country, needs to grow its economy so that it can actually create, because our biggest challenge is to actually create 8 to 10 million jobs a year for the next 20 years, right? And Mumbai, being one of the leading cities, has the most potential. Now, so to answer the carrying capacity question, I think the responsibility for all of us is how do we do that, right? How do we maybe double, triple Mumbai's economy and make sure that we do that in a sustainable, inclusive, manner, right? So that is the problem we want to solve, right? Now, your question about what does Mumbai do as an economy, right? See, I think one of the, if you see the, now if you look at the list of top 20 preferred employers in the country or top 30 preferred employers,
right,
you will see that the first 10 are not in Mumbai. Now,
or
at least 7, 8, that if you go from 11 to 20, they are all in Mumbai. This is the old businesses, as we call it, the Tatas and the Reliance, and so they are all still attractive, right? They are not in top 10, but they are, so now the question is, a lot of these, if you look at the Phone Pay founders or you look at the Ola founder, they all started in Mumbai. One of the big reasons they left Mumbai was the lack of affordable housing. And affordable is not affordable for those people. It's the affordable for 22-year-old, upper middle class.
Correct.
Yeah? So again, I think from an economy perspective, as you talk about it, right? I think that so we have to make sure that that is one segment that we are able to respond to the needs of these new companies that want to attract that talent. That is very different from trying to actually provide for the 14 million people who live in this city and the 22 million people who probably earn 60,000 rupees a month and are trying to make a life out of it, and how do we create access to jobs and housing and other education opportunities for them. So I think we have to make sure that we understand this problem and we are able to deal with each of these issues based on its own merit. So economy, I think Mumbai is at a good point. I think 99, 2000, I think end of the 90s saw the big growth. I think by the time it was 2005, I think a lot of limits were reached. Whether it's transportation, you talk about overcrowded trains. Overcrowded trains, what the situation was in 2002 or 2003 and what it is in 2024, a world of difference. It's not at all that bad. I travel in the train very, very regularly. In 2003, when we had those old cars and they used to get really packed, you would get into but now it's not that bad. As it's more the sort of that feeling of how bad it was there is there. Now the densities are no longer what they used to be. I think the new 12-car trains with the new coaches, right? So I think that has dramatically changed. The other thing is now all of this metro infrastructure will come, right? Housing is being, see what had happened is, even in a place like Mumbai, and this is going to happen in all Indian cities, basically because land is not easily available and land parcels are small, unlocking land for infrastructure is going to be a battle. And I'll tell you, Bangalore is actually probably hitting that limit right now. If you hear the stories today, housing in Bangalore is not affordable like it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
So why are we getting to this point? Mumbai was built on the back of affordable rental housing. The common man was able to stay in a chal and still live in the formal sector, work in the formal sector. And it was a sweet spot of affordable housing
but it's the aspiration also. Today nobody wants to live in a chal.
No, but fair enough. It can evolve into something which, why is the housing...
So my point is that, one thing is simple. Land is hard in India. We are a land constrained country. Land is hard. Land ownership the way it is, and that is the structure of our. So land, to unlock land for infrastructure is always going to take longer than it would anywhere else.
Fair enough. And so being an island city, we have
islands. I'm saying Bangalore is also going to struggle to this.
Correct.
Now, but the good thing is, again, right? I feel like if you see, whatever the good and bad of this whole redevelopment policies, all of that, the kind of housing stock that is coming on the market today, and this transportation infrastructure, again, it's all far from ideal, but I personally feel that actually this is going to be I think the big...
Which part is far from ideal, the housing or the transport infrastructure?
Everything, right? Okay. I mean, the quality of life, the lack of open spaces, the quality of our air. Yeah, it's all far from ideal. But
Correct.
I do think that as, India sees this big economic growth in the next 5-7 years, which it will.
Inevitable.
Which will, I think Mumbai will have a big role to play because of all of this infrastructure that is coming on board, both the housing and the transportation. And that is, I think, the important thing for me that Mumbai needs to focus on, right? Instead of starting to build more big infrastructure projects, some of that can happen in the MMR, is to focus on quality of life, is to create more green spaces, it's to create more walkability, it's to clean up the air, and to deliberately make an effort to do this, because I think these are the things, because also what we always say, as the economy grows, you want higher value jobs to come, right? Mumbai's population has not grown, but all the current people in Mumbai have got wealthier, they are living in bigger footprints, they are also moving up the value chain of jobs, right? So if you want higher economic value jobs, then you have to work on quality of life. And
Correct.
So I think it is imperative for Mumbai to
one might argue that you don't need to have a rich population to actually consider quality of life to be a priority. But the point is well taken. I think a lot of the things that you touched on are questions that we have lined up for you. So we'll go at it one by one. Our next point is to do with something you just brought up, pedestrians. Think as an issue of urban planning, it's something that has not received its limelight in a city like Mumbai. In the recent years, of course, there's been several pushes for better pedestrian infrastructure. Over the years, we've seen the growth of cars in Mumbai, and like you just mentioned, that as there's been economic prosperity, there's been a middle class that is getting richer. It's an aspirational middle class. One of the low-hanging fruits of that aspiration is owning a car or two. Sometimes an extra two-wheeler with that. That's how the families kind of organize. And old buildings that were built before this boom happened were not really designed to contain 2 cars per family and 1 two-wheeler or whatever. And naturally the spillover then came onto the road. And as that economy grew bigger, the spillover then went onto the pavements. Now, we've all heard of we know the study that says, MMR study that says that about over 50% of everyday journeys or trips are on foot alone, just pedestrians or pedestrians/cyclists. Of the remaining 50%, the vast majority are public transport, your suburban rail system, your local trains and your BEST buses. And then you have your taxis and two-wheelers, and that last little smallest pie of the piece of the pie belongs to private cars. I think it must be around less than 5%. Right?
Yes.
There and thereabout.
Yes.
Because the study is dated and maybe there's some shift. But for accommodating the needs of this less than 5%, the road widening has happened. Road widening happens by narrowing the footpaths. It should be called footpath narrowing rather than road widening. Similarly, we've seen that eventually even there used to be pay and parks which used to operate on footpaths, which gradually is changing. But the last priority was for the pedestrian. The quality of pavements also. Mumbai used to be a very walkable city, one of the most walkable cities in this country. If you see old videos of Mumbai and the mass and hordes of people walking across, at the fort area, crisscrossing, and it looks so beautiful. Pedestrian infrastructure is completely deteriorated. Now, it's a little cruel to tell that person who's worked for so many years and finally bought that car to say, you can't own this car because you have no place to park it. His argument would be, this is the city's job to provide me parking, I'm willing to pay. It's even more cruel to tell a pedestrian that sorry, the space that was once allocated for you to walk safely and comfortably, can't give that to you anymore. Is this a problem that has no solution at all, or can we find some kind of a middle ground?
See, I'll go back to, if I'll pay for the parking, nobody wants to pay for parking. Huh? That's the question, right? That's the hard question, yeah. Parking by principle should have three, park has sort of three values. Huh? It has to be paid, it has to be public, not private. All parking has to be paid, public and off street. And I'll tell you why. I'll just, let's talk about parking for 2 minutes, right? So nobody wants to do this. And parking if we solve parking, if we take out parking, we will solve the walking problem in this city. We don't need to do a second thing. Huh? I'll tell you why, even today, so one is, on-street parking, right? That on-street parking has to be removed. That goes and you have to build the parking lots and you have to make sure. Now there is enough parking that has been built in Mumbai, because of all of our TDR rules and all of that, and there is enough parking. It's just hidden away that nobody knows in buildings that got higher floor rises because they built parking. So there's actually enough parking also.
What you're calling off-street parking?
Off-street, there is enough off-street parking, right? It's just that it's a bit inaccessible or people don't have information about it. Again, this is a very easy to solve problem if we use some technology and identify where all of the parking is and take everything that's on the road and put it up, right? So that, but it is a little bit of extra work and so that's one, right? So one is, everybody's trying to build 3 and 4 parking lots within their buildings and things like that, right? I think that also, we have to come up with parking minimums, right? That there should be no parking minimums, right? That there should maximum, even builders want to provide one car park also, and parking has to be public. And I'll tell you why. And there's a funny story, Paris is now, car use has gone down so much, right? Young people are using bicycles and they have been able to, people are walking, bicycling, using the metro. Nobody's using the cars. Their basements, which used to be former car parks, are now become rodent infested, are having, they are having sort of homeless people sort of settling in there because these are empty spaces now. So Paris is right now filling its basement with cement because they want to close this parking spot because otherwise they are having these problems, right? So I'm saying is that's the reason I'm saying actually all parking should be public. Ideally, that's the.
So you're saying no parking within the private building at all?
Everything should be public. You can have your neighborhood parking lot, you put your car there, and that's a disincentive enough for you to not then go to your car. Nobody's asking it, nobody's challenging the aspiration to own a car. I think everybody should, and that aspiration should be met. It's that when you use the car in the city, you have to pay what it costs to use that car. That is the simple ask, right? Yeah, and today we are subsidizing car use by giving free parking and spending on all of this road infrastructure and all of it. Nobody is saying don't do it. Just pay what it costs. So why I'm saying is parking also that is, but simply I think if we can make sure that off-street parking is taken out and and all of these parking spaces that are created that get used, and we can always create some valet parking services, right? That come. There's enough employment opportunity. We can create an app-based valet parking service which somebody comes to your doorstep, takes your car, puts it in wherever the parking garage is, and you pay a fee for it, right? So if people are willing to pay, I think this problem can be solved. Politically, very hard problem, right? For somebody to say, that parking will no longer be free. If that is done, I think half of the pedestrian problem in this city, most of the pedestrian problem in this city will be resolved, right? So parking is, if you look at historically, I remember mayors in cities in the West, in Latin America, talk about how they were impeached, how there were riots on the street, the day parking was taken away. So it's not easy. It's a mindset change.
It's political will at a strong political will.
Absolutely.
I think it's, it will be unfair on a large population base. A lot of people have second-hand cars which they bought. you know. So for them to pay that much for the parking, I mean, it's
No, it is not that much. No, and it is, see, but that is the whole thing. No? You can't have both sides, right?
Correct.
Parking is, see, the fact that you bought a car, right? You have to pay what it costs, right? You buy an air conditioner, you buy a, you know, you.
Okay, so let's see, these are items of, let's say, call it a little bit of discretionary spend. Okay. Because you have otherwise a public transport option, it's a discretionary spend, it's luxury to own a car. And that coming in the way of a pedestrian means that you're dealing with the problem by sort of penalizing a little more or making it a little more expensive for the person who's already spending on a discretionary thing like, okay. But what about something like hawkers? Another very big topic of discussion. Twitter's burning with debates on hawkers. Here the issue is little different because it's a livelihoods issue. The hawker is also a very hard-working person who's working very hard to make ends meet. They're also employing some people, the informal sector. Okay. And the pedestrian is also a very hard-working person. Both of them need the pavement. How does one look at, and you've dealt with so many cases of, you know, as a consultant for cities, how does this issue come up and how do you deal with this?
Of course. You know, see, streets is a contestation of three things, right? It's the, you know, it's the vending, it's the parking, and it's the walking and cycling, right? This is sort of the shared space that these three populations, I think hawking or, see, vending, I don't think takes that much space, right? I think we can always, you know, all you need is another 1 or 2 meters, right, outside the vending is in you know, our streets, you know, it's not in India, streets are actually places where, you know, all of this sort of activity happens. It creates the character, you know, it creates the safety. I mean, having vending also makes sure that this street becomes safe, right? Because there are eyes on the street, there is activity. See, you know, New York, and I'll give you New York about 15 years ago when it decided to become a walkable city, one of the things they did from a perspective of creating safety is they said that they chose uses, land uses, right, that would be open after 7 p.m. on the ground floor of their streets, right? So whether it's restaurants, they wanted to make sure that at least every third shop or third sort of street front or whatever land use is open on weekends.
Eyes on the street.
Yeah, so they very they took all the banks, right, and put them on the first floors. They only left the ATM on there. They took, because in New York previously all the banks were on the ground floor. They consciously changed the zoning and pushed all the banks upstairs, right? This is one example. Like any use that sort of seemed need not be on the ground floor, they moved it upstairs. And the idea was to create eyes on the street, right? So vending, it becomes an extremely important. Now you have to regulate it again, like parking, right? You can do time of day permits, right? You know, you can do a breakfast vendor, afternoon vendor, an evening vendor. You can make sure that you design. Can you create community kitchens that people are not, you know, you don't want somebody to bring cold vada pav, but you don't have to have them like frying them on that spot, right? It can be fried like 40 meters away, 50 meters away in a community plot, which is in a garden or something, where they are able to do the sort of, and then the point of sale is much smaller. Right. So there are again very.
I think it's not a debate on whether, it's not a binary question really.
So I think what I'm saying is there's a management problem, right? I think is simple.
Is it not true that there are so many instances where hawkers have overrun the pavements, and then you're forcing that pedestrian onto the street?
No, so what I'm saying is you have to have a clear place specific, time of day specific plan for those spaces.
Correct.
Right? That's all I'm saying. I mean, see, whether it's so one is to remove. I mean, I was giving you the more theoretical conversation on parking and vending.
Right.
But I think eventually with every meter of what we are saying is every meter of space in this city right, has to be designed. Right. You have to. It has to be deliberate. Right. So if it's a vending zone, let's provide for it, let's create it, let's make sure that it does not overrun. At the same time, it's not about removing them, right? So I do think that every meter of space needs to be designed, everything has to be deliberate, and it is very, very doable.
Correct.
And
so what you're saying is we can coexist with hawkers, they can provide valuable services, and we can walk comfortably.
And there are enough examples of this being done already in the city. So it's not like we have to go somewhere else or to see. There are enough examples where, this has been done. And in some places, and a lot of times there's a lot of opposition to, one of the big things is, are you narrowing traffic lanes? But I think also one thing is absolutely important is that traffic lanes also need to be continuous, right? They need to be aligned. Then what we are also saying is every time a pedestrian actually steps into a stream of traffic, based on that, it actually really deters the traffic flow. So actually just keeping, it is in the interest of the traffic to keep moving, for pedestrians to, so purely from a perspective of moving traffic, you are better off if pedestrians don't get in the way, right? Just from traffic flow theory, because every time somebody gets in, there is a shock wave that gets created, and that actually adds to the delays. So just to respond to that, I mean, if we want cars to move well, we need to actually take pedestrians out. Now, to take pedestrians out, you have to provide them with sufficient space.
Right.
And so you and an adequate space, just like for cars, we have these sort of, measures of V/C ratio, and there are people, what we say, there are measures for pedestrians, right? What we say is, 4 to 6 pedestrians per meter square, like pedestrians per meter square, and about 6 to 8 pedestrians per meter per minute, right? This is if you have to design for this, right? So there are measures. There are now, I mean, we have only developed some very video based approaches to do these measurements, and fairly quickly you can ascertain this and make sure whether it needs widening, then how do you solve that problem. But I think while you're designing the streets or the roads, you have to make sure, like you said, account for all of these three things, right? That's all part of that. And every meter should be designed and deliberate.
For viewers who will have different opinions on whether or not we can coexist harmoniously with hawkers in Mumbai, do write to us. Do agree with us and do disagree with us. We are very happy to engage with you on this and all other topics as part of the Mumbai Manifesto. Dr. Pai, moving on, we've left out
one thing. I don't have a PhD, so please don't call me Dr. Pai. That is not.
But I'll stick with Madhav.
Yeah, Madhav is good. And one other thing is, one thing I do want to talk about. Even in a lot of Western countries, when they had the financial crisis, they started allowing these food trucks and things like that, right? That movement sort of came. And they do, they standardize the food trucks, they do time of day. See, they are serving a need. I mean, I'll give you an example why hawkers are needed, because, see, we did a study of MIDC. MIDC
Where?
in Andheri. Andheri, Marol MIDC. We did a study in Marol MIDC. About 10-15 years ago, my numbers are not absolutely accurate, but we found out that 75% of the people who come into that MIDC for whatever work earn less than 10,000 rupees a month. And at that time, this is 15 years ago, and in the official zoning, there were the restaurants, like in official restaurants that were serving food, and the cheapest of that was the MIDC canteen, Marol MIDC canteen. Food, the cheapest available meal was 75 rupees.
Correct.
So, and on the street, eventually everybody was eating on the street, whether you earn 10,000 rupees or less, or if you are earning in lakhs, everybody was eating on the street, and they were eating. So basically our official zoning was not providing for a use now. So
for 75% of the population, correct.
For 90% of the population, because 90% of the people were eating on the street. So their needs of eating were not met, right? So now so this is what I'm saying also. So informality takes over, and because if you're, there are some things that you plan, and some things you let like organically evolve. You just have to then make sure you take the necessary corrective action so that it doesn't interfere with these kinds of things, and you put some rules in place, right? That's the way to do it, right? So removing hawking is not the right argument.
Hawking itself is an organic response. It is not a planned thing. Leaving room for flexibility lends beauty to a city, because the city co-creates, so to speak. It's just the challenge, like you say, is to bring in the right amount of regulation, the right amount of monitoring, so that there is a certain assurance for both parties that is maintained. There's one party we have not spoken about, and it's a party which I don't know whether it has grown or it's diminished, but cyclists, you know, lot of people talking about cycling, and we have two type of cyclists in Mumbai. We have the cyclists who have the 20,000 rupee cycles, you know, wear those cycling pants and the helmet, spandex, and yeah, we have the dabbawalas and you know, the old, that big black hero cycle with the handlebars coming in. It used to be a big part of Mumbai's landscape, and then there's a push for it to grow again, and the government has also done some things. There's been a lot of promotion of cycling. The big question on everybody's mind is cycle lane hona chahiye, nahi hona chahiye. The cycle lane thing, you know, BKC tried it, and if you remember, there was some 15 kilometers of cycle lane in BKC or something of that sort, and it was a massive failure. You know, if there was such a big demand for it, why are these things failing? Is it really possible to have cycle lanes in Mumbai? Is it a pipe dream?
I'll answer. I'll go back to that walking question once in a while. See, the other simple thing, the important thing about walking also for all of us to remember is like, look, you know, there is enough evidence that says that if you walk 30 minutes a day, your probability of, you know, getting cardiovascular diseases, diabetes lowers significantly. Right. So we need, I mean, just for our personal health, we need a city that allows us to walk 30 minutes a day. And I think that it's a healthy cities argument why we should make walking possible. So that's one. The other is a city like Mumbai. Most distance, if you look at island city is 4 kilometers east to west, right?
Seven at its.
Seven if you go like all the way.
Mahalakshmi, that alignment is, yeah.
But about 4 to 6
4 to 7, yes. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, so the thing is, you know, walking distances are not more than 3-4 kilometers. You know, if you are a healthy person and if you want to use public transport, just getting to and fro from the stations is something that if we do 2 times a day, you know, a lot of our 30 minutes of walking get done, our lives become healthier, right? This is so that's the only, that is the basic reason why we should have this, right? And I think it's almost becomes a quality of life, a public health argument that actually supports walking. And 4 to 6 kilometers, not that much, right? That anybody can walk that much, right? So cycling, so that's, I just want to, cycling, what you have to understand is, you know, if you hear the stories of all the cities that won the cycling battle, it's I mean, see, you know, it will be idiots like us who go cycling, take the risks, and it's not easy. It's and then there is, but you know, you need to create that momentum and the volume for you to justify that space. So I do think, cycling is the cheapest way. Again, same thing, trip lengths in Mumbai are short, 4 to 6 kilometers. You know, today with e-bikes, this is absolutely, you know, even the weather arguments and everything get killed.
Correct.
So cycling, you know, cities like Bogota and others, you know, which are equally congested cities. And Bogota, you know, if you look at that, TomTom puts out the most congested cities in the world every year. You know, Bangalore is 1, Bogota is 2, Mumbai is 3, or some in that order, aage piche.
Correct.
Right, but Bogota today has 10% cyclists, right? It's simply because
Bogota had political will.
Yeah, so they created the cycling infrastructure, right? So, you know, I think it is absolute. And, you know, BKC, you know, the kind of cycle lanes they created, and for the audience, you know, you have to do it for the people who will cycle, no? I mean, nobody need, you know, did you design it for people who are getting off Kurla station and coming?
So basically,
so it was very poorly planned, right?
Correct.
You have to have
didn't go
audience,
anywhere, or
you have to have a audience in mind, right? So once you have an audience in mind, then you plan for them. I think that cycling, again, the health argument comes into for cycling also. Distances are 4 to 6 kilometers, e-bikes are easily available, so you know, you should actually cycle it. Now the big difficult question today to answer also is, as you get into e-bikes, right, what is their role on, you know, even in the scooters, and so this micro mobility, as we call it, like now even these delivery vehicles use these vehicles like these lower powered vehicles, And there I think we have to have, so that's where I think now the tension also is, you create these bike lanes, will these people take over those bike lanes, will that affect the safety?
I think it will evolve.
But no, that's where globally has become, because those crashes actually become quite significant and all of that, right? So that
they have a speed limit, no? I think which is some.
Yeah, but it's very easy to breach those speed limits, right? So then it becomes a problem.
Correct.
And then you can't get into, so the safety. See again, things like cycling, all of these things are, you have, like what you talked about, right? That BKC cycle track, so we abandoned that idea. See, these are things.
Can I ask you something about the BKC cycle track? You mentioned about the poor planning. There are 3 stations around BKC. One is Bandra station, one is Kurla station, and one is Science station. They are not so far away. Okay, if the MMRDA had somehow managed to link with a cycle lane, extend that cycle lane towards these station areas, do you feel that the BKC cycle lane
and
thing
they would have
been
had to provide some shared cycles that were, or free cycles, right? Because
Correct.
most people who are coming by train are probably coming from Badlapur,
Correct.
or coming from Vasai, so
Correct.
they don't have a cycle.
Correct.
So they are landing there.
Correct.
Yeah, they are using share rickshaws, but share rickshaws are equally, so what is the audience? No, share rickshaws work equally well. Now, why
Correct.
will my transactions at cost of getting a shared bike is also very
No,
high.
the shared part was not about the rickshaw or the bike. It was about the dedicated lane.
No, but who's using it, right? See, if you're saying people who are coming by train will use that lane.
Yes.
I get off at Chavan and I want to use a cycle.
Yeah.
I have to go there's a shared rickshaw that takes me for 10 rupees.
Correct.
I mean, why will I take that cycle?
Correct.
What is the transaction cost? Is it easy for me to leave it where at my other end? Right, so you have to think through what I'm saying is audience,
Correct.
right? I think, instead now I think, cycle, and more and more of the vendors and all are moving to e-bikes, mopeds, so that Dabawala using that black cycle, that actually those people are actually better off using a moped or something.
Correct.
Because they are
Delivery, yes.
So now I think for us, if we are thinking about cycling, we have to target the young people, the college going people, and then think about these kind of destinations where actually providing that dedicated infrastructure will help, right? So I think what
kind of destinations would these be?
Colleges, young places of employment,
Right.
Generally where we see a demand, that's where we have to put the cycle tracks.
But it is something that is a value proposition, at least.
Absolutely. See, from a cost effectiveness perspective, right, it is an absolute no-brainer,
Correct.
right? And in a city like Mumbai, right, where weather is not that bad, right, and distances are small. Distances are small. Even 10 kilometers with these nice modern cycles is not a big distance. And if it's an e-bike, it's absolutely not an effort. So, and if you get that 30 minutes of exercise, it improves your, health and other outcomes. It's a no-brainer, right? And
Correct.
what it costs.
Correct,
right?
correct.
So, and zero pollution, and our city that is dealing with 300 AQI and all, zero pollution. If you get to 10% modal share on bicycles, it's an absolute victory, right?
It's a huge victory.
Yeah, and it's an easy low cost thing where you can engage the whole city to do it. So, so for me, again, like I said, if you take out parking, you put bicycle lanes there. That's that's an argument for air pollution, right? And I do think that, Gautam, this is not political will. This is where young people, this is what needs. I'll tell you a story of city of Guadalajara in Mexico. One person started a bicycle movement there. So he then started doing these Sunday rides. So he would bring people. He went on to become the mayor. He created a political party based on the cycling movement. He created a political party. He won. Then he became mayor of Guadalajara. Then he became the governor of Guadalajara, right? So this is the young people's political movement that he led, and the cycle was the symbol of that movement. Right? So this is the future.
Yeah.
So this is the future. All of us want healthier lives. We realize the need for physical activity. Cycling provides a great sort of opportunity to do that. So I think it's a movement, and that has to be led by young people, and politicians will take
follow.
note of it.
All you young people who are tuning in, please make a note of what.
We did a case study on this Guadalajara. I'm very happy to share. But it's an amazing story of somebody who started a bicycle movement, became the governor of the state.
Incredible.
And he did it by starting a Sunday bicycle
Incredible.
move it.
Incredible.
So that's, and I think we will get there as the next generation evolves, and I mean, these ideas of sort of healthier lifestyles, active lifestyles become part of what we need to live.
No, there's a lot of hope with the next generation, honestly, with the young generation of Mumbaikars. I mean, if you look at the recent past of urban contestations, if you look at RA, if you look at Coastal Road, so many other projects, there are people getting involved on ground, on Twitter, there, and a lot of these voices are actually young voices, which is really heartening to see. I think we'll move on to the next one, which is which is something that is close to your heart, is climate change and Mumbai. You've, of course, been a part of developing the Mumbai Climate Action Plan for the city government. Every year it's the same story, Madhav. It rains, it pours, Mumbai gets flooded. If there's a high tide that comes, then the water becomes all sorts of descriptions, from knee deep to waist deep to chest deep, and the first thing we hear about is that Milan subway flooding, and then there are long traffic jams, and lot of news gets published about that. But again, the pedestrian is suffering much more. I think that pedestrian has to still reach the office at the same time. You can't, it's a finite excuse you can give, saying barish hua. He still has to reach his office on time. He has to get back home because he has his commitments to his family and his children, and he has to do that wading in water, particularly where there are station areas. Outside major railway stations there's waterlogging, there's flooding. Outside major bus areas there's waterlogging and flooding. And somewhere in the middle we had come up with this superb idea of building skywalks in the city. Everywhere there were skywalks. Some of them had some finite success, a lot of them failed. I mean, in a great area of flooding, which is Nana Chowk in South Bombay, D Ward, they built this huge skywalk which is like a spaceship, and nobody uses it, right? Is there some, I mean, as the intention, there was investment made in pedestrian infrastructure. Let's look at it like that. For a change, can we look at some meaningful investments in pedestrian infrastructure that will give comfort, long-lasting comfort through monsoons for this working class of Mumbaikars, those who are coming and going on foot?
See, I mean, I'll go back to your climate change question, right? So I think, see, one thing we all know is that, the poor are the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, right? So, I mean, and then the argument is they haven't caused it, but now they are the ones who are, exposed to the vulnerabilities, that it brings in climate disasters. Second point I do want to say, see, Mumbai actually is one of the most sophisticated cities in the world, and say this, that can manage floods. A 200 mm rain day today is a non-event in Mumbai. If you go to any other city in the country, whether it's Gurgaon or Bangalore, 20 mm or 30 mm of rain and those cities are at a standstill. So Mumbai actually has done phenomenally well in the last decade to deal with rain events. So, and primarily being, so, and of course now we are starting to see, last year we were good, 2 years, last year we didn't have a single rain event that was more than 200 mm. The year before that, or 2 years before that, was when the Taukte happened, and we really had like these very crazy rain events, right? And we know, what we also know is, as the sea surface temperature of the Arabian Sea rises, once it gets beyond 25 degrees or something like that, you actually will start to see cyclones, right? This is all external to what Mumbai can do. So more than 200 mm rain event days will continue to remain a challenge. But now we are very sophisticated in at least 18-hour, 12-hour forecasts of these rain event days. It's not everyday barish hua, but today if it's a 200 mm plus rain event day, I think it's you're better off staying at home and doing minimum activity or working from home or whatever. Like at least everybody who can do that, so that the load on the system is lower.
What has made us sophisticated? When you say sophisticated, I mean, what has changed in the last decade?
Several things, right? One, we have, we've put in place a lot of these pumps to pump out water. They've built these storage tanks. So then there is a very, very good protocol. All the drains, etc., are mechanically cleaned. Everything is kept in good condition when these events happen. We are able to predict them much better, right? So we are able to give out warnings much better. We are able to give very specific warnings. Now we can say there's going to be a cloud burst on Chembur, right? So then you are immediately, BMC deploys disaster management, that they are already in place. They are able to proactively deal with these. So both the response, the disaster response, the sort of pre-disaster planning, and so all of that has improved. So there are a lot of things that have been done quite positively on this. One is just so both on both sides, right? Like both on the physical infrastructure, and I think once it gets beyond 200 mm, then what we are now saying is some of this slowly will also need to use all of the natural infrastructure, right? Which is the mangroves, which is the creeks, which is the all of that. How do we better use it? The parks, the whole sponge city idea. And sponge city idea, you will accommodate 10-15%, which is when you breach that 200 mm mark, then this kind of infrastructure will help. So investing in it. So one side of the problem is flooding. The other side of the climate change problem that is emerging is the heat. And heat is, actually we don't notice it, but heat is the silent killer. And also what we have seen with flooding is that community action happens. When there's a flood, community comes together, they will act. Heat, we all think we can fix our problem. Pani piyenge, nimbu pani piyenge. But if you have a heat event, if you were to say, then you lose 2-3 days of livelihoods. Some lives are lost, all of that, right? And heat also require, what we are also seeing very clearly, is and there is the idea of, so there are 2-3 things, right? One is we are saying that there is greening has a clear impact on reducing heat. So if there are trees, if there are water bodies, then you get a 5 to 6 degrees difference in land surface temperature. What we have to understand about heat is there are certain breach points, right? At 38 degrees, beyond 38 degrees, your body starts to behave differently. The chemicals in your body start to behave differently as it responds to that. So it impacts human productivity. Your body goes into emergency. Beyond 42 degrees, it behaves very differently. So it's not like 34 to 38, there was no difference in how human bodies. Now, so we are routinely, the number of days we are going into this territory is getting to 30 days, 50 days, 70 days. So you have, now when that happens, now this year you saw there were heat wave warnings, right? That is a first step in that direction of acknowledging it and of starting to deal with it, right? So you have to, so heat becomes, so one is getting the science of how do you respond to the heat disaster. Then there is the idea of greening, right? That you start to bring so that you are able to keep the temperature below these breach points. Because if you keep them below the breach points, then you are in a different, sort of impact space. And then the third thing is, the heat island effect is also 6-7 degrees, right? So one of the studies we did, and we can do this very easy because today with satellite we can measure land surface temperature data. Land surface, not what you feel, what is the surface temperature. So what we saw even on Andheri Kurla road, that once you build the metro, right, we also went from 2 lanes to 3 lanes and we built that metro. It means that much volume of concrete got poured on that stretch. Just that volume of concrete, because concrete absorbs heat in the day and emits it at night, right? That's why also we get these warmer nights and all of that. That much actually resulted in a 5-6 degree temperature rise in those same places, right? Again, greening of this kind of infrastructure, making sure trees are there, making sure whatever greening you can do. So all of these things need to be done, right? It's not one just this. So I think we need to build. So this green infrastructure building becomes absolutely critical, and protecting our green infrastructure, which is RA, and now we are using the word infrastructure, the mangroves,
but
all
natural
of that.
capital,
yeah, all of the natural capital of the city. Because so how do we make Mumbai nature positive, right? That nature positive Mumbai will deal with heat, will help us deal with like whatever, tomorrow we may prepare to do 250 mm rain days by building more infra, by spending, but we will still have 350 rain days. Then can the green infrastructure sort of step in that. So this nature positive Mumbai is an absolute, again it goes back to that quality of life argument, right? Correct. Right. So one is actually really preparing to deal with the floods, but this major nature positive movement also is absolutely required in
Correct.
Mumbai.
Correct.
And again, lot of young people have to participate in this, because it's not, today the obsession is with this Miyawaki. It's not, there is a science to, we just published as WRI with supported the BMC to put out a greening guidebook. There's a Mumbai greening guidebook.
Wow.
That gives.
Where can we access this?
It's a public, it's on BMC website, it's publicly available. Mr. Amitabh Bachchan retweeted it, so
Okay,
it is
lovely,
here.
lovely.
We were actually, it was open for feedback. It was part of the flower show that happened in the Baudaji Lad Museum also. This greening guidebook basically is a guide to, again, to do greening, whether it's within your balconies, to actually what happens in the mangroves, what kind of landscapes are there in Mumbai, and what is the biodiversity that works based on what is the typology, what is the soil. So all of that details are provided. Again, it's a work in progress. This is a 1.0 version. People use it, we get feedback. There's a whole community of people who do this. But I think the science again, it goes back to we have to bring science to solve these little problems, right? The problems of the streets, the problems of the greening,
right?
And that is one important point I always say is that we always talk about there's not being any public space, right? I think there's lots of public space in the city, right? Every nook and corner is public space, right? Every public, there's a tendency to paint and do lighting and all of that, because there is a narrative of beautification. I think we have to move from a narrative of a beautification for public spaces to a narrative where every single public space has some purpose, is some common purpose for the betterment of the city. That can be walking, that can be greening, that can be climate protection, that can be, it's activity, right? So it's activity. And we have to try to think about these spaces becoming multi-use. So every public space also becomes a seating space. Correct. It also becomes a greening space. It also becomes a place where water can percolate. Water table. It becomes a place of sports, but there have to be Maidan also. Every space has to have
multi-use,
multi-purpose of actually delivering this quality life of walkability, accessibility, nature positivity, and this actually is not going to be done by one person or one leader. This is where we need the whole city to participate in actually, doing this beauty with a purpose, right? This making Mumbai that city with that purpose of actually making it more accessible, more green. And I think that is the only way to go about it.
Our next question deals squarely with public space, but we will provide you a link in the description of this video where you can find both links to the Mumbai Climate Action Plan and the greening,
greening guidebook.
The greening guidebook, which is also a publication of the municipal corporation. So Madhav, let's talk about public transport. Mumbai, financial capital of India, has been for so many decades together, is built on the back of a strong public transportation system, arguably the best in the country for so many years. The suburban rail system, Mumbai local trains, the BEST, punctual, reliable, clean, safe. But it's deteriorated over the years. It's become overcapacity, bursting at the seams like we discussed earlier as well. And there's been something to look forward to in the recent years, which is the Mumbai Metro. Big thumbs up to the citizens of Mumbai who have endured all the dug-up roads for the metro work, but we realized that a better future is coming, right? We're going to get the metro. It's going to again be safe, it's going to be comfortable, it's going to be brand new, it's going to be fast, it's going to connect parts which are otherwise not connected. Couple of questions. One, when we talk about the common man who's using the train and the bus, how much migration are we likely to see from the Mumbai suburban rail system, for example, to the Mumbai Metro? Because we know that the fares are going to be different. The second question, a very interesting one. If you look at the Mumbai Metro Line 3, I think is the one that's Kulaba Seeps. It's some 35,000 crore rupee budget for this. And now, while they started the work and they still haven't finished, at some point the Western Railways decided they want to run an AC train. The AC train is running on the same alignment, pretty much parallel to the Mumbai Metro. So it begs the question, could we have spent that money upgrading the existing suburban rail system and the existing BEST system, maybe even working on dedicated bus lanes and the likes thereof. Electrical buses, of course, have come in. But could we have spent money on augmenting, fixing, rather than building afresh? So the two questions, beginning with the migration one, and then...
Yeah, see, I'm not going to get into the argument whether the metro should have been built or not. Now we've spent the money. I think it's going to live in the city for 100 years, right? So, I mean, I don't want to sort of even... I think we needed that additional public transport capacity. Actually, additional public transport capacity will give us the power to go and put in place those very strict parking norms and other things, right? So I think, the fact that we are going to build all of this rail capacity, really, I think what needs to be done after this is we really have to go after parking and eliminate on-street parking and, really put in place the disincentives for car use. So I think that has to be done. We have to improve walkability, we have to improve walkability to these stations, and we have to push for metro to becoming the sort of main mode of transport, right, which is the aspiration. So I think that should be the policy response also, right? I mean, I'm not, that there is to be a big push to disincentivize car use.
So you're saying the migration will be towards metro from car owners more than...
From two-wheelers, see there is also... See, what we have seen is a slightly better service of public transport first attracts young women, middle class. There's an inclusion perspective. There's a economic inclusion perspective that comes. I mean, if you see you put a better quality public transport, the first thing you will see, mostly 60% women will start occupying that space. Even when the metro started, now it's just overcrowded, right? But yeah, the other thing I think that will drive, and what railways, I mean, it's politically been very hard to solve. This station area was never solved. Whether it's Andheri station or Bandra station, I mean, a lot of times just the time it takes for you, and I'm saying this because I regularly use the train when I used to live in Andheri, just to get out of the station was 15 minutes, 20 minutes, because of how you never solved the station area and the crowding issues. And it's not that it was technically not easy to solve, it just required the city to work with the railways and come up with it. Never happened. We tried it repeatedly, just became a hard problem. So you put in place the extra 20,000, 30,000 crores to build this metro line, right? Hopefully now the city has full control on how it deals with these station areas and you don't get stuck, right? So I think that the metro will dramatically transform the quality for people who would otherwise, so we will get people who will come from the railway, right, which also already, the railway is still overcrowded, as you're saying. It's not 14 people per meter square, it's 8 people per meter square, right? 8 people or 6 people, which is still bad, right? You just imagine a meter square of space and 8 people standing in it. That is the density.
Super dense crush load.
Super dense crush load is 12, 14 and all of that. Mumbai Metro is also getting to that. It's just getting, Mumbai Metro today is above 8 people per meter square.
Right.
I think there is enough latent demand. Metro will get used, probably not as, and slowly we will start to see development coming along metro. If you look at line 1 again, line 1 10 years ago was not, but now if you see all of the new employment, is coming along that corridor, right? So there are about 10 hotels that have come on that corridor, right? The new Radisson. So slowly we will start to see this densification along this metro corridor. Good things, right? Because that will, especially commercial densities. Also, it is connecting line 3, for example, connects all of these business districts, which were otherwise very hard to go. You couldn't go to BKC to Worli, to Seeps, to Nariman Point. Now you will be able to do all of these things, right? It will connect these business districts. A lot of the travel that happens during the day will happen in the metro. You will start using it from the airport. Wherever you will have to deal with congestion, you will start using the metro, right? So some amount of car use will move, but I think a lot of people will migrate from other, and also deal with a lot of what we call induced demand. See, railways, the railway capacity can be used for outstation trains, right? See, Mumbai today is like dying to bring outstation trains into the city because there is not enough capacity. So if the railways feels like if their trains are not getting used enough, they will create that space to bring outstation trains into the city, right? So railway capacity will be utilized very easily. Again, that is now their railways problem.
I think the question is slightly different here, because there is a class of people who uses the suburban rail, someone who takes a 3-month pass.
Yeah, but it is subsidized. No, see,
it is highly because it is subsidized.
They use it. They will continue to use it. Their frequency, instead of running 20 trains a year, if the railway feels that they are not getting enough demand, they will run 16 trains a year. So it will not change anything for the person who wants that subsidized fare. But if somebody is willing to pay more, right? Today, all of you look at City Flow, these kind of bus services that are now City Flow has been running some, they are all of that kind of population also will move to the metro.
What happens to those people who are making the 10,000 rupees a month?
They will go by suburban rail, no?
Again, if their services are so today, for example, some amount of bandwidth is taken up by the AC train. There are now some 12 services running every day.
That is very trivial. I mean, you will go from 20 services an hour to 16 services an hour. I don't think that will make a big difference, I think. So I do think that I don't think that we are taking that away.
There's no chance we're going to push people out of the city, because now we're making Mumbai not affordable.
No, I don't think that railway. I don't think that's going to happen with this kind of. Mumbai is becoming unaffordable because of land value, right? Not because of this, right? Because of land prices and high cost of housing and all of that. But anyway, where are the trains overcrowded? They are overcrowded beyond Kalyan. They are overcrowded beyond Dahisar. That is where you hear all of these falling incidents and pushing. All of that happens not in Mumbai. That happens beyond Kalyan, beyond Dahisar. There actually that metro line connecting Thane Bhiwandi will be very, very. That is actually absolutely critical. This extension from Dahisar to Vasai, absolutely essential. I think these lines will be far more cost effective than this anything. I agree with you that we are creating parallel capacity, especially beyond Worli or beyond Lower Parel to Kulaba, unless we are going to see a big revival of South Bombay in terms of real estate. I think that is the redundant part of the of the network. The rest of it, I think, is more than required, and it will get utilized. And I think this
so beyond Worli, you feel that
beyond Lower Parel, and I think that is where we have. That is where I think also this will give the political power to really go after parking, right? So I think, and removing parking and creating the true cost of driving will actually become then the thing that needs to be done policy wise.
So a fully operational metro system in Mumbai, which we can look forward to in the next
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. After that, we can expect at least the car owning class to make car owning more and more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair point as well.
With BST, I will say to you, see with buses now, the transition to electric buses, the renewal of the fleet, and also now this, how one of the digitalization that we are seeing of BST, right? Like the app-based ticketing and all of that, all of fantastic, right? All of the right things. The challenge with buses. And why bus? It's not the crowding that has deteriorated. It is the speed of the bus in the peak hour, right? If a bus is moving at 6 or 7 kilometers an hour, no matter how fancy that bus is,
right,
it's not good.
It's just a shade above walking speed.
Yeah. So you have to eventually, medium to long term, you have to find a way to speed up your buses. That's the only way. Or you make them station feeders and all work. But if you want to build buses so wherever, if they have to do any sort of longer distance travel, if they are below 6 kilometers, if they are below 10 kilometers an hour, they are really not very effective. And so we have to think about how do we speed up the buses in the peak hours, right?
Historically, as a chunk of accounting for the journeys, the buses have never been where the trains have been, but they have not been very far behind either. They are actually quite a significant.
We have to figure out how do we get buses to move at 20 kilometers an hour. That is the simple answer that has to be
So there have been so many proposals for dedicated bus lanes or BRT in Mumbai. Why is it not taken off?
It's a politically hard thing. So, and maybe now I think with all of this metro investment, maybe it may not be needed also in certain. So they play a bigger role of being station feeders. And then and some of these longer routes that need connection, again it's an affordability question. Some things, BST is also the more affordable choice that a lot of people take.
It's interesting to note that you're saying it may not be needed at all.
I'm not saying it will. As station feeders, it will be absolutely.
So then you're saying we should have BRT at the station areas?
No, I'm not saying BRT.
Or dedicated bus lanes?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the appropriate response, I think, has to be designed. Dedicated bus lanes also has big risk, safety risks. So if you have
there was a pilot done recently at BKC, which was working fabulously well, but they shut it down.
I don't know exact details about that pilot. So, but I mean, as an expert on this topic, I'll say you that dedicated bus lanes without adequate planning for safe bus stops always end up resulting in, you can't have these high-speed buses hurtling down the city streets, which has such a high volume of pedestrians, without necessary protection. And dedicated bus lanes without safe bus stops always results in fatalities. This is the data from several cities across the world.
Why are we assuming that we won't be able to provide that? I mean, if you're willing to spend 30,000 crore rupees on a metro line.
That is not dedicated bus lane. Then you have to get a BRT. You have to do, there is no dedicated. You have to do full-fledged BRT, or you can do interesting planning where you build these services that don't that are able to go at faster speeds, like these limited buses and all of that. So you can do very clever bus route planning that addresses the speed question that you don't.
Right. So moving from public transport, we come to private transport. Mumbai has also seen a slew of projects in recent years which are focused on this 5% car owning population. To name a few, we have the Bandra Worli Sea Link. We now have this newly opening coastal road. We have the Eastern Freeway as well. And it is, I guess, a response to something on the ground where we are seeing that traffic is just crawling, it's become very congested, and so you need to build bridges. After 1995, we made a lot of bridges in Mumbai, across Mumbai. But every time we make the bridges, it's exciting initially, and then we return to status quo. The average speed doesn't shift, the needle doesn't shift significantly. So now the coastal road is different. It's a big scale project. It's a huge project that we've put in, on the western waterfront. Is the coastal road going to be any different? Firstly, do these things work? All these investments, these thousands and tens of thousands of crores that we've put into car infrastructure, how useful have they been in decongesting the city, making life easier? And what difference can we expect from the coastal road? There's so much promise that the coastal road offers. The BMC has made such amazing promises. The city is waited for it to open. How is it going to change our lives?
See, I think you have to understand that congestion will never go away, because there is something called induced demand, right? Even you and me who own cars don't drive it as much because there is congestion. So if there is some space opens up, that space gets filled up. I think the latent demand for driving is very, very high. Even in Mumbai, when we say car ownership is quite high, but not everybody uses the car, right? Even today, very few people actually, about 40% of the car owning population actually use the car on an everyday basis. So there's a lot of latent demand. No amount of road space we will build will solve the problem of congestion. Congestion will always be there. So congestion is not a problem to solve. You will never solve it.
So when you're saying congestion, just to understand it better, you're saying that the average speed or the average rate at which traffic moves will more or less remain the same.
Congestion is the ratio of, peak hour speed, which is 6-7 kilometers on some of the busy roads, to a off peak, like a night time speed, which is like 30 kilometers an hour, right? So congestion will never go away. Big cities like Los Angeles that have built like thousands and tens and thousands of kilometers have not been able to, because the more road space you create, there is enough demand, latent demand to fill it up. So congestion will never be solved, right? What we want to solve is mobility in the city, the ability of the people to get around, to do their needs and their aspirations, right? To get to their opportunities. So public transport. So then you give them choices.
That's
right?
The public transport point is well taken.
But point is you give them choices, right? And then they choose. Some people prefer the comfort of a car and willingness to sit in traffic for 1 hour or 2 hours and all of that, versus somebody who is willing to take the train and go standing, because it saves them half an hour of time, right? And today a lot of us have chauffeurs, so you are sitting behind and now you can work at the back of your car, so it's not like it's productive time. But point is, so my point is that no amount of infrastructure is going to change that, right? So it will, for a short time period of time, improve some people's commute, right? But eventually,
it's temporary.
Yeah, a point-to-point commute, that demand will get filled up, because, like I said, there is enough latent demand is there that will get. For me personally, both the Eastern Freeway, if you were to ask me from as an economist, as an urban economist, I think the Eastern Freeway and the coastal road both are bad ideas for a city like Mumbai, whose biggest sort of assets is the waterfront.
Absolutely.
So lot of places in the world, I mean, I always tell this story, if people, there was in the city of San Francisco, they have these iconic bridges, the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge, and there used to be a coastal road basically that connected these two bridges for 40 years. From they got built in the late 50s. It was
the Embarcadero.
Yeah, the Embarcadero. There was the 1989 earthquake, that thing fell. They never rebuilt it. Right? Then they reclaimed it and created this fisherman's wharf and the whole waterfront, and it has become the biggest attraction. So when you talked about the economy point, this waterfront became one of the biggest sort of economy drivers in that city. It became the tourist destination where people from all over the world came and all of that, right? And I think it's not about building a sea world, right? It's about creating that walkable, enjoyable open space that actually attracts people to that place. And I think so we have to, I think that is one, and unfortunately now that sort of opportunity is lost. Our waterfronts are 6 to 7
Why is it lost? I mean, the Seoul has pulled down a very large 8-kilometer highway. You're just talking about San Francisco. Is there hope that someday the coastal road will be pulled down and the Eastern Freeway may be pulled down and we may be able to have So what you're saying is not good for...
So I think, my point is that, I think it seems, so I feel like it was not an environmental argument. It was an economic argument that, we needed to protect our waterfronts because it is good. As we talk about high value.
Coastal road is very much an environmental argument. You're taking away so much of the benthos by reclaiming so much of the land.
I'm saying if the high value, if you're talking about attracting people to do high value jobs, they're looking for quality of life, they're looking for open spaces, right? That's the, I think.
And the waterfronts were those.
The waterfronts
were the most romantic, beautiful part of Mumbai.
Yeah. So I think that is a opportunity lost, I'm going to say. I don't think it will dramatically, it will, probably improve some people's life dramatically. But otherwise for the majority of the people, it is not going to change their lives. Even the Bandra Worli ceiling still had, the numbers are below 100,000.
It is nowhere near the projections that they had.
It's below 100,000.
Since you've mentioned waterfronts, I have one slightly out of syllabus question here. And not many people may be aware that the eastern waterfront of Mumbai, the Mumbai Port Trust, which was on basis of which Mumbai was built, is now slowly becoming defunct. It's been taken over by much larger ports. JNPT, of course, is much bigger than the Mumbai Port Trust, and now we have a string of ports on the west coast of India. So Mumbai Port Trust as an important port is diminishing. It's going to be opened up, and there's some plans in place already, I think. Of course, it's central government land being Port Trust land. What are 5 things that you say will be must-dos, whatever that project shape looks like? What are the 5 things you will say must be done in that space if it is to boost Mumbai?
Yeah, one, it has to make sure it's connected to the city, right? Then in the Eastern Freeway, in a way, becomes that barrier.
Correct.
So we should find ways under the Eastern Freeway, at least, that it becomes porous and people are easily, that Eastern waterfront people are also able to sort of be connected.
So connectivity to the rest of the city.
Like connectivity to the rest of the city. Of course, if there are opportunities to create affordable housing, etc., then those should not be lost. I think we have to think about uses.
When you say affordable housing, Are you talking about affordable housing for ownership, affordable rental housing?
That is, I mean, again, housing is a broad topic.
Very
so,
okay, let's not.
Yeah, let's not delve.
But affordable housing must be a part of.
I mean, whatever open space we can create as part of it, because that is the other thing the city is starved for. And then, of course, whether you also have to think about, whether we can use it to create new commercial space or whatever. I mean, I think it has to be well planned. I think it's a large land. It has to have a single integrated plan. We can't, like what happened to the mill lands, where even today, you walking there is a disaster and there is very little amenities.
Correct.
So I mean, I think
lost opportunity.
Yeah. So I think open space, affordable housing, amenities, which is just walkability, like I said, low income like affordable restaurants, affordable options have to become a part of
Correct.
it.
It can't become an exclusive city for the rich.
Yeah, elite. Yeah.
Correct. I think these are all very valid points. It's also going to be much larger than the mill land parcels. It's square kilometers. It's a fraction of Mumbai city, Public open spaces we've discussed many times as part of certain other topics, but let's look at it squarely. Recommendation is about anywhere between 6 square meters per person to 10 square meters per capita. For a city like Mumbai, we actually have less than 1. On paper, I think it's 1.1, 1.2, but effectively it is much lesser. Within this, some parks are closed, some are defunct, whatever it is. And there are certain areas which are counted as part of public open space. For example, gym khanas. There's so many of these gym khanas. Marine Drive is a good example. All these gym khanas, that it's access controlled public space, so to speak. One big one that has been in the news recently is the Mahalakshmi Racecourse. Mahalakshmi Racecourse is some 300 or 350 acres of land, prime land in the middle of Mumbai. It belongs to the city. It has been given on lease to the racecourse. Now the racecourse undeniably is a part of Mumbai's heritage. The structure is heritage, the activity is heritage, the place is associated as a part of Mumbai's history. It's very rich history. Okay, and it's maintained in a beautiful, pristine way. There is access for people to walk on the outside and the perimeter. It's not like but again, it's access control. There are large parts of those 350 acres where people are not allowed to walk freely. The proposal to make it into a central park is now being hotly debated. How does one approach this as a city? At one end, you have the need to preserve history heritage. At the other end, you have a large population of people who are just without access to quality public green open spaces. Which direction should we go as a city?
No, like I said, I think public space is absolutely important for the city, right? For the quality of life, for, like I said, about even as green spaces as a response to some of the climate related disasters that we are expecting. So I think I do think that every effort, again I'm not every effort, so a lot of times we end up just talking about the big projects and we lose focus on a lot of the small things that also can be done. So absolutely, I mean, the racecourse should become like a big public park that is accessible to the people. I mean, this kind of an opportunity to have this kind of space otherwise is not available. So it becomes the natural response. I mean, given that we have less than 1 meter of public space.
Correct.
So I think that is, almost for me, it's a no-brainer that it should be converted into a public park. But at the same time, I think a very, just like the fervor with which we are building the coastal road, the fervor with which we are building the Mumbai Metro, it's the same fervor with which we should build public spaces. Right. So I think public spaces, cleaning the air, have to become front and center topics for the city, and that is, I mean, see, cities are very contested political spaces, and we have to allow for that contestation to happen, right? But it can't be I think just like, and this is because for the larger, just like everybody makes congestion and, the personal fights, I think, people should realize that, public spaces, walking, cycling, cleaner air are equally, cleaner water.
I mean, we're in a tropical island city with sweltering temperatures. We have sea on 3 sides, 4 sides because we're an island, and we can't swim in it because it is full of sewage. I mean, it is such a disservice, and it's not like we have so many public swimming pools that people can go to. You know,
Again, it needs STPs to put in place. I think we are at a point, I think, where, like I said, all of these are qualified. These have to, this need the kind of public support, the public push for these things to become. These are all solvable problems.
Solvable problems.
Yeah, even the Mithi, even there are all of these stories about the Thames being so dirty that fish would die, and today it's cleaned up, right? So I think even it's possible, it's all possible. It just needs a much more engaged citizenry that actually works on these issues of public. It's not about what is the government doing, it is how do we participate, how do we improve our understanding of these challenges, and it's not going to get solved in 5 years, right? These are 10 years. If somebody takes a 10-year view, I think all of these problems are solvable.
We've been taking 30-year views. It's called the development plan.
No, there's a public view. I'm saying that is the government's view.
Right.
That's the state's view. I'm saying if as people of the city,
right,
we are prepared to understand problems and take 10-year views,
right,
we can solve air, we can clean up the sea, we can create enough public space, right? And I think this is where also the city is absolutely lacking non-state institutions that can take leadership roles and drive these things, right? Again, if you look at a lot of, and again, gave you the Guadalajara example. It's a great example of people's movement, right? If you look at what has happened in Istanbul, over the last 15-20 years, I think it's a part of the evolution of urbanization in a country. I think we are at that moment, where
it's strange you should say this, because there isn't a paucity of non-state actors who have been operating in Mumbai for the right
state institutions. And there's a difference between actors and institutions. Institutions are organizations that have the depth, the intellectual depth, the tenacity to work on issues and work, not oppose, but work collectively, work positively, bring people together. And these are not simple problems, right? These are complex problems, and you have to be willing to deal with the complexity, right? I think that's why I said cities are contested space. Today's streets, you brought out the contestation of the street. It's not an easy problem. It is livelihoods, it is aspiration, it is so you're dealing with these real issues, and unless you have the ability as a city to recognize those contestations, create the space for those conversations, and all of that comes also with a very organized, engaged citizenry that participates positively to solve these things. I think there is a need for us to do it. I think, and we have, there is a need to think about how do these new generation institutions get created. I don't think Mumbai has even if I look in the country, Bangalore, Pune have much better, younger, citizens, non-state institutions that are engaging much more with citizens. I am telling you now because we work at, and why I'm saying that now that I've been I get at least 20 requests of 14-year-olds wanting to do internships of something that they can engage with. There are 10 institutions in Bangalore that I can point them to that they can go and work. There are none in Mumbai where they can go and engage and work on problems of waste, problems of green spaces. And I think I do think that there is a paucity of institutions that are actually really engaging in sort of civic issues and trying to deal with it, in very, proactive, positive ways.
So more like an NGO or a think tank that is dedicated to a particular thing. That,
I wouldn't even, whatever, you can say it's a non-state institution, right? I don't like to use both these words because they are actually also typecasting. I think there are issue-based institutions.
There's a flexibility.
There are issue-based institutions. You're trying to solve a problem and you are doing what it takes to solve that problem in a very positive, constructive, organized way.
Our final question. Around 2019 to 2020, I think, the Smart Cities mission was launched, and Mumbai was selected as part of the Smart City mission, if I mistake not.
I don't think Mumbai was part of the smart cities mission.
I think it was.
Maybe
It was Navi Mumbai. I don't know. But any which way, a lot of cities wanted to get smart. How does Mumbai become a smart city? What does it mean in the context of a Mumbai to say yes, Mumbai is a smart city?
If you ask me personally, what does smart city, the whole idea of smart city was really to use technology to be able to help better manage and address your challenges. So whether it's running transport, now this whole digitalization of transport that we are seeing is for me an example of smart city. I think doing better air quality monitoring, doing better water metering, better getting rooftop solar better integrated into our city, improving building efficiency and lighting use. Commercial buildings is the biggest users of energy in the city. If you use high quality sensors and all of that, you can dramatically reduce the energy use from commercial buildings. So this smart cities is a huge opportunity to save energy. You can probably half energy use from commercial buildings if you use the latest technology, and actually save you money, right? It's a business model because you don't need all the lights. Now you can, with motion sensors and other devices and all of that in place, you can actually reduce energy use, and that saving in energy use will pay for all of that, all of the sort of technology that will have to be put in. It's just that the capital cost has to be put up front and then in. So for me,
a lot of these sound as private sector initiatives or private initiatives. What can the government do to make the city smart?
So what I'm saying is, for me, smart city is the idea of using technology, right? Basically, the technology is GPS, sensor, and now AI and all of that to be able to better manage the resources of a city, right? So waste is something government does. Can we do better segregation and all of that? So there are various, every place, right, where every service delivery you can use technology, right? So for us to make sure that we use appropriate technology, right? Again, that's why I'm using appropriate technology. So developing and understanding, building the right RFP, choosing the right vendors so that we use the appropriate technology that is required to solve that problem.
Right.
Will make us a smart city. Right?
Understood. Before we let you go, you've done a lot of work with a lot of young people. To the young Mumbaikar, what is your message?
No, like I think, one, we have to solve our own problems, right? I think, and it is important for us to develop a better understanding of the civic challenges that we have, and then, like I said, engage in them in a constructive, positive manner. And most of the issues that we talk about will not be solved in 1 or 2 years, but they can all be solved if you take a 10-year view. So I think creating that mindset and then engaging in those issues and then solving the immediate problem, and that's that approach to public problem solving that we need. And if we do that, we can transform this city into a very livable, likable city.
Madhav Pai, thank you for joining us on the Mumbai Manifesto. It's been a great pleasure, and we can't wait to have you back here.
Thank you.